today we have a real treat in the studio, Tejas Konduru. I'll give a quick bio on Tejas and then we'll welcome him in. So Tejas is the founder and CEO of Via, a mobile marketing platform for e-commerce brands. The son of Silicon Valley engineers, Tejas started Via to help retailers engage with customers on the device they carry around all day, their mobile phone. Via puts together campaigns on mobile native channels like apps, texts, and direct messages on Facebook and Instagram. Via has raised over $75 million from various private equity firms, including Tiger Global, Peterson Partners, and others. Tejas was also recognized this year on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, which is a big deal, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
With that, welcome, Tejas. Thanks for being here, dude.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
We met at the world's largest retailer, so it's only fitting we talk about retail stuff.
That's right, dude. For those who don't know, Tejas and I, we interned at Walmart in Arkansas way back in the day.
2015 summer. 2015,
man. Good times. You know, those are 4 months of glory. Getting to work at Walmart. So this is fun, dude. I actually remember, before we dive in, I remember you saying at one point that summer, you were like, I'm going to start a company and I'm going to be like the youngest, like billionaire or so. You said something, dude, that really like, I was like, dang, like this guy's going to go somewhere. Like it stuck with me, honestly. And that's, so here we are, dude.
Dude, here we are. Yeah. I feel like I was much more optimistic that summer. I think I was like 20 years old.
Yeah.
Now I'm 20. Young. Yeah. Now I'm 27. So
yeah.
But it was a cool summer, and I think Walmart was awesome. But I think we both realized going a different direction might be more engaging.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, man. Well, the first question I usually ask my guests is to just understand. You know, what should the audience understand about your upbringing, you know, your childhood or teenage years, to understand kind of who you are today and how that molded you? Yeah,
I think maybe a quick backstory was I was actually born in India, so I moved to the States when I was 1. Both my parents, when they showed up to the U.S., I think my mom kind of stayed at home initially because like daycare was very expensive. My dad's first job in 1996 was working at Apple. So was there, I think, for like 24, 25 years. And now does a startup of his own. And then my mom, her first job in the US was working at Google in like 2003, 2004. And then she went to go work at a company called Looped, which was in the first batch at Y Combinator. And the founder was Sam Altman, who ran YC after for a really, really long time. So I think in a lot of ways, I think I saw my parents work really, really hard. Didn't see them too much, but I thought it was the coolest thing. They would always tell me the American dream is knowledge and wealth creation. You learn a lot and hopefully no one can take that away from you, and you make a lot of money doing it. And for me, I thought that was the coolest thing. And I think I had the typical maybe like first generation immigrant kind of confusion where my parents loved like cricket and Bollywood movies, but like nobody in school loved that stuff. So I wanted to, you know, I couldn't relate to my parents on much, but I remember being taken back by how much they looked up to the founders they worked for. And for me, I kind of wanted to be the people that they admired a lot, which were the founders and people they worked for. So kind of my whole life, I thought, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, and hopefully I can create these environments where people learn a lot and make some money doing it. So I always thought being an entrepreneur was the best way to do that, and the path that I wanted to take. So that kind of shaped me a ton. And I think at BYU, like most people, you and I are in the same boat, but tried a bunch of things, thought finance was the coolest thing ever. Both did finance, right, coming out of college. And I think it was cool. I think I did investment banking, and I think I quickly realized that it's super hard to really create environments where you create knowledge and wealth for other people. It's really hard to do that working for a really big bank. So I realized probably starting a tech company was what I knew and grew up in, you know, the heart of Cupertino my whole life. So it seemed like the most logical thing to do. Yeah.
You were right in the thick of it in Silicon Valley. So that does make a lot of sense. You mentioned your dad started a business while you were growing up. So what was that, and how did that kind of shape you at all, seeing him do that?
I think it was super eye-opening. The first one he started was like this website for like people who came to the States who were like Indian American to like connect on, and classifieds and things like that. KSL, but for like a niche community. Okay. I think it was, I remember my dad would make me stand at like a booth to get people to sign up for the website. They do like promotions, right? Hand out pens and stuff. And I just remember it being like a sheer grind.
Yeah.
Like there was no easy way to get traction or success. But I think I just realized like no matter like what you've done or where you've been, it's just getting anything from 0 to 1 is just, it's just hard work.
Yeah.
And then it's just the harder you work, the luckier you get.
That's right. I've heard that multiple times, and I think that resonates a lot and is very true. I want to say during our time interning at Walmart, you'd said during high school or college that you had a side business where you were doing either dances or parties. Tell us about that, during high school or whenever that was.
It's a little bit infamous now as in it was a school newspaper, but sorry, I just ran a Spartan race too. So like
right on.
I'm still getting everything back from Saturday. But in high school, I would rent out like community centers or dance studios.
Okay.
I'd get like online insurance through my parents, and then I would sell tickets for them. I went to a very nerdy like group of high schools, so I'd have kids at other schools sell tickets for me, and they had like ticket numbers on the back, and then we charged like $10. Pre-sale, $12 at the door, which I realized was a really bad denomination from change perspective. No one really has $12.
Sure.
But we would just sell these tickets, and we'd sell like 400 or 500 tickets per dance.
Wow.
And we'd find like a DJ who's like a high school DJ, right? Like in high school, I'd hire the bouncers from our local like gym. It was called the Right Stuff. Nice. No longer exists, but it was just awesome. Like it was a really cool like way to make quick cash. That never, it's just cash. You don't realize you have to pay taxes on it, right, when you're younger. But I would, it was a cool side business. Like my second semester of senior year.
That's great, dude. How much would you pull in off those, like on average?
I think it was like $5,000 to $7,000 per dance. Wow, so we did a couple.
That's solid.
Yeah, and then we did a couple, and then we ended up getting a lot of trouble for it.
Sure.
Just because I think people would drink a lot and come to it.
Yeah.
We would never have alcohol. And then we came up with this thing where we close doors. You get a stamp, and then from 7 to 9 p.m. you can go in and out as much as you want. After 9, if you leave, you can't come back. Just because people would drink, like have alcohol in their cars, drink a ton, go in, come out, drink. And then it just ended up being like a huge nuisance for like the small city of Cupertino.
Yeah.
So,
it's a good thing you had insurance and all that. That's awesome, dude. That's a good haul for a high school student. You know what I mean?
Tons, yeah.
Well, cool, dude. Okay, so take us from you. So you come into BYU, you decide to study finance.
Yep.
And I've talked about this with other guests on the show because a lot of guys go into college with different mindsets depending on. Some people think college is a complete waste of time. Some people in the entrepreneur community see a lot of people bash college.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. But what was your mindset coming into school? Like, what were you trying to get out of it? Did you think you were going to, start a business out of college? Like, what was your approach?
Yeah, I think I don't know. Part of it was like, I just thought I had to go to college. So I think part of me was like, I had to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And Chase, I know you remember this, but I'm not Mormon, and I went to BYU. So when I was in high school, Mitt Romney was running for president. Mm-hmm. So for me, I thought it was the craziest thing that a presidential candidate, like one of two, went to like a school I never heard about. But I think I always had this where I had this quote my freshman year, like dorm, like a whiteboard I bought, and then I never erased it, so it got stuck, like immortalized on it. But it was, you truly start living when you leave your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So for me, I thought BYU was that, right? And it was like trial by fire in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I think in college, I don't know, I think it's super valuable. So I would just say like the friends that you meet and this from like case studies, internships, those experiences, like I feel like are kind of almost like growing up and going to prom or like, I don't know, like having your first kiss or being in high school. Right.
Yeah.
I think college was incredible. I think, I don't know, I knew when I came to college that I'd probably do a startup one day. But I realized that I probably needed some experience. And as much as people bash college, I think the internships and like your first job can make a huge impact. Like I think even doing Walmart and then doing investment banking, working on like IPOs, as shitty and as hard and as like pedantic as that job is, I think it gives you a lot of credentials to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. So I think and you probably saw this from working at JP, but when you go try to start a fund or after you went to PE, it just gives you credentials where I feel like if I didn't go to college to do those jobs, I feel like I'd be a step behind in terms of like the credentials or what people would think of me.
I agree 100%. I feel like it gives you, it increases or elevates your starting point.
100%.
Because if you were to not go to school or college and start a business, I believe that it would take you kind of the same amount of time to get the experience or the credentials, the reputation that it would to go and work for, a JP Morgan or Credit Suisse or whoever for a year or two.
Tons,
you know what I mean? Like there's somewhere where you're just elevating your starting point to where your skill set, your reputation, your resume, your track record, all of that kind of adds up in the minds of investors, clients, potential, customers, that it just accelerates that path. I think. So.
I think, and you've probably seen this, maybe it demystifies it too a little bit.
Yeah.
Where like I remember watching my MDs proofread an email 3 times before going to a client. Mm-hmm. Like people who've been there for like 30 years, and like I don't know, in a lot of ways you realize like I don't know, it's not as mysterious as you think it is.
Yeah.
And even building a business, like there's no magic to success, but it's just I saw a ton of just like, oh wow, it's like. You just got to grind.
Yeah. And to your point, like the soft skills you build, 1 in school and then 2 in the workplace, like how to craft an email, how to like be organized, how to, to get things done, are really invaluable. It is a balancing act though, because you left Credit Suisse pretty quickly.
Super quick. Yeah.
And so, whereas for me, I think it probably took me too long. Like, I was 5-6 years kind of just in the grind, right? Again, pros and cons to that, but it can be, there's a balance, because if you're just sitting in a corporate role for 10 years, we
saw a lot of that at Walmart.
Yes,
with the badges and stuff.
Yeah, totally. Right. It's like at some point the golden handcuffs get heavier and heavier.
Yes.
You start getting, options or what have you. And it's like, it's harder and harder to leave. So it's a slippery slope, but it's a balance. So anyway, love that, dude. Well, so you come out of BYU. So why'd you do investment banking?
I think I am a huge proponent of like working in places that are like demanding and supportive. Mm-hmm. I think the best coaches, the best teachers, the best parents are demanding and supportive. So in a lot of ways, I was looking for a place that had that structure and rigor, because I think college is a place you can also coast kind of, it's not always on or off unless it's midterms or finals week. So I just chose banking because I felt like you'd be around a like-minded group of people that are also just like want to be in that environment. Also thought risk adjusted, you would learn a lot of good skills there. So chose investment banking, but I think pretty quick when you go there, you realize, it's just, you learn what you need to learn pretty fast. And the question becomes like, do you want to get better and better at like relationship building, right? And like other types of things that maybe aren't of interest. But I probably left like 10, 11 months in pretty quick before my first year even hit. Then I think the big thing for me was, I think the concept in finance of like operating leverage. So like, how does your fixed cost scale with your variable costs? So the best example is if Walmart wants to add $100 million a year in sales, if you ignore Walmart.com as like it's a separate business, you have to probably go build a supercenter or two. Mm-hmm. And it takes a ton of time, investment, negotiation with the city, training, right? Whereas like Salesforce, to add $100 million of revenue, it's like, maybe I just add a couple sales reps, return on marketing, but like my server costs, like nothing really like grows in costs, like fixed costs. Mm-hmm. But I realized pretty quick as I interviewed for buy side, like I know you did buy side, right? But I realized pretty quick, you don't really have operating leverage working at a fund that's not your own, or you don't get that much operating leverage working in finance. It's kind of like you eat what you kill. Mm. And I realized pretty quick, I was like, dude, unless I wake up and decide to work 80, 90, 100 hours a week, like I can't take 3 weeks off because like these deals won't get done, relationship building won't get done. So the idea became, what is the next thing that I do that gives me the best operating leverage? And it's usually starting something that's your own. It could be a fund, a company, it could be anything, but it was, if you build a team and you do it well, you can go away for 3 weeks and know things will get done. So the whole thing became like, how do I build operating leverage in my career? That's great.
That's a great way to put it, and a good, smart way to think about it. So what happened after Credit Suisse? So did you, and I don't know, this is where I'm learning, right? So did you think of VIA? Did you have the idea? Is that why you left Credit Suisse, or was it something else? Like, walk us through that.
To be honest, I don't think I had the idea for VIA. I would say every great startup, you pivot into your startup. You start with something else. Mm-hmm. I went to a coding boot camp, so I realized pretty quick that I probably wasn't the most technical person. And I realized if I was going to start a tech company, I should probably know like what it takes to create it. So went to a coding boot camp, met our first employee there that I ended up hiring. So went to a coding boot camp for 3.5 months. Quickly realized like coding is probably the same as finance. It's just a sheer grind. It's like moving pixels, padding. It's very, very emblematic of like a good financial model on like PowerPoint.
Yeah.
There's no secret to it. It's just monotonous. Sure, if you want some like AI formula that projects this, like in both cases, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
So I think I realized like most software, they call them CRUD apps, but it's like create, read, update, and delete out of a database. Like that's what Salesforce is, right? It's just updating a database based on what a sales rep does. So went to a coding boot camp. And after the coding boot camp, I started working on VIA like January 2019.
Okay.
Took like Christmas off basically, November, right? And when I started working on VIA, the initial thesis was my parents had a bunch of restaurants on the side. I told them it was a really bad idea. You probably don't want to do a part-time restaurant owner. They, for some reason, thought it was a really good idea. They consistently lost money. And I remember my parents had them since like 2013, 2014. And I started to notice over the years where 2016, I would help them with bookkeeping, right? Because I did finance at BYU and stuff. And I remember noticing there was a couple months there in 2016 where like over 50% of their revenue was just takeout. It was DoorDash, Uber Eats, Caviar, Postmates, Grubhub. And 4 of those 5 companies are headquartered in the Bay Area where the restaurants are. So it was like ground zero. And I started telling my parents, I said, I didn't know you could build a restaurant without a dining room. And back in 2016, it was still like 6 years ago, a novel concept. But the initial idea for VIA was you have all of these like mobile first customers, you have these like physical customers, and you have these e-commerce customers. And same thing, right? You have people who order from a restaurant's website. You have people that use DoorDash, and you have people that go there physically. But they're essentially 3 different commerce clouds who do 3 different payment processing. So the initial idea for VIA was, hey, what Square did or Toast did for physical retail with like restaurants and bike shops, maybe what Shopify did for websites, could VIA do for like the mobile phone or mobile native channels?
Got it.
So that was always the same thesis. I think when we started selling to restaurants, which was the first mistake. It's a pretty like, through and through. Like I don't think it's a very hard business, but it took probably 1.5 years to figure out that we wanted to be in e-commerce.
That's who you wanted your client to be, your customer. Predominantly.
I think it took a year and a couple months to figure it out, but I think we ended up getting there.
Okay. So you go to this coding, because that's my first questions is like, how do you build an app? Like, how do you build a website? Like, so how did you go from the coding class to actually having a platform or an application?
The honest answer was I just started working on it. And then I found these 2 gentlemen in like Belarus at the time. They're now in Poland. But started paying them like $8 an hour. One was like $7 an hour. Okay. And just started saying, hey, can you help me? Like when I sleep, can you start working on this? Yeah. And I would say most software engineering, like to build an MVP is pretty simple. Like it's like it's not too complicated. And like, I feel like because of like AWS and like Zapier and OpenAI and Twilio and Sendbird, like people have made it really, really easy to then create software now as well, where there's like tons of software to make software easier. But yeah, I just started making it myself, went to the boot camp. You realize it's not rocket science to make a web app. It just takes a lot of time. And the experience is thinking through, like, if you want to send 1 million messages, like how do you do 1 million messages? Yeah. Like how do you loop through that effectively? But I think it was just initially just me coding away and plugging away and then finding 2 people on Upwork basically.
Got it. So once you had the app built, you then started putting it out to these restaurants, other groups. Take us through that kind of 1.5 years. So was it just you or did you bring on a partner? I know you have a partner now, a co-founder, but tell us about kind of what happened in that time.
Yeah, at least that year brought on a partner, but it was like mostly me. I remember I was in New York City. I like quit banking. I couch surfed with a bunch of people, and it was door to door in New York City. Like the first customer was like it was called like Veritas Studio Wines in Hell's Kitchen, but it was absolutely brutal. I realized I was really bad at sales. 1 and 2 was like selling New Yorkers is like a very different challenge.
It is for sure.
But dude, it was tough. Like I just remember thinking like, wow, this is this sales is hard. But I remember it was just tons of no's. I literally created a smaller version of the app, right? Because you can't build everything day one. And then it was just cold calling businesses. And it was going door to door until I got the first couple. And then we were lucky enough where like we took the vision, like the first $1,000 a month in revenue, and we raised $500,000. So quickly hired a couple salespeople here in Utah, customer success managers, engineers. And we probably stayed at that team for a really long time just because I don't think it was working for a really long time. But yeah, it was just straight cold calling and going door to door. And it was like, no secret. It was just a sheer grind.
And so you were in New York initially. When did you move to Utah and start hiring some of the folks? I
think probably, so started January 2019, probably June, July that year.
You moved back here?
Moved back to Utah. I always kind of split time between the Bay Area because like I was I still live with my parents. So
okay.
It's just, free rent. So I would visit Utah every other week. But we started having a team like June, July, August. We started hiring a bunch of people.
Got it.
And then we started hiring them here in Utah. And then even then it wasn't that obvious. It was like, shoot, we don't have scripts or we don't know what to do here. But it was always kind of like we just got to figure out how to get product market fit.
Okay. So you mentioned you raised some money.
Yep.
What was the decision there? Like, how did you guys source that capital?
Yeah.
And kind of the valuation and like making that decision?
Yeah, I think that first 500K was honestly, and it's to my co-founder's credit, but a lot of his old bosses from Vivint who really liked him, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was my dad's friends, like my old bosses. I'm talking like 25K checks, not like someone gave 400K and
yeah.
But it was just like it was a lot of different checks. So we got a lot of different checks, and at that time, I think it was startups do that, like do a safe, right? Like there's no terms on it, but it was just that 500K was more so like people who took a bet on us.
Yeah.
And it was taking 25K checks, right? Like no one's going to give you like 300K for nothing. So
yeah.
It was just collecting checks, and it didn't come all at once. It took probably 4 months to get the full 500K.
Okay. And so what were you, because we did something kind of similar, but what was what were the terms? Like what were you providing them or promising in return?
Yeah.
Was it just like, hey, was it like gift money?
Yeah. We did like a safe, so simple agreement for future equity. So we actually didn't even attach a valuation to it.
Okay.
We just said, hey, the next time we raise money, we'll give you a 20% discount to that fundraising round.
Okay.
So we just raised which is common in startup land, I think. So raised a safe
cool.
and just did that. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize that was the acronym for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice,
exactly.
man.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got a few employees.
Yep.
You're back in Utah. You've raised $500,000. So where did it go from there?
Dude, I think it was somewhat dire because we sold small businesses, and then I think we didn't have that much revenue, but we hired a lot of people. So I think February 2021, I remember telling my co-founder when he visited San Francisco for like a silly conference, we thought we could learn from. And I remember telling him, I said, dude, hey, you got to stop going to Costco so much. Like these are big snack runs. Like people spend like these like $300 a week, right?
Yeah.
I told him, I said, hey, if we don't figure this out by like in like 2-3 months, I didn't want to say it, but I was like, we have to I think we have to cut, I think, I remember explicitly, I was at this, I was in Chinatown in San Francisco, and it was a restaurant I went to a lot during my banking days. And I was there with my co-founder and our first employee that I met in the boot camp. And I remember having this reaction of wow, I wonder if this is one of the last times I could business expense something, because I was like, dude, there's this thing called COVID that I'm hearing about where people are going to lockdown. We only sell small businesses.
Yeah.
And even that, we're really bad at that. So I was like, there's no way we're going to actually figure this out. So I remember there was a lot of days where I was like, dude, this is brutal. This is not trending how I thought it was going to trend after banking. And especially having those moments, I was like, wow, this sucks. So I have a lot of empathy when people go through those early days. But dude, it was what was crazy, and this is to my co-founder's credit, but we always sold what Shopify does for websites, Via does for the mobile phone, and we always sold the same thing. We just had we sold Alder Home Security in Orem. They're still a customer to this day.
Yeah.
If you ever go to a Mountainland Kitchen and Spa in Utah, 8 locations, they're still a customer to this day. Mm-hmm. That's the legacy product. My co-founder sold Diesel. I don't even know the Diesel Brothers. It's a TV show.
Yeah, the Muscle, Keaton Austin.
Yeah, exactly. So he ended up contacting them, and they were like, "Hey, we actually want to use someone else for our e-commerce site." And I was like, "Oh, well, we don't connect to Shopify." And my co-founder prospected in, and he's like, hey, we should build a connection to Shopify. And I remember taking a look at it and being like, wow, this is really outside of our core thesis. But at that point, COVID was starting to hit, lockdown was happening. And I was like, well, I guess we should build it, right? Yeah. They're going to pay us more than all of the revenue that we have. So within a month, 30 days, we built out an e-commerce integration. And probably the first day we transacted, by the third day, they paid us more money in 3 days than all of our other customers in a month, right? Nice. And I remember thinking wow, we should have just been in e-commerce. And I always kind of knew we should have. I just don't know why. I just didn't do it. Yeah. I think I was just very stubborn. And then we sold Minky Couture here in Utah. So It has been a customer now for 3.5 years since almost day one. Then we started selling to e-commerce brands and didn't see the impact from COVID as much. But even then we had half our sales team on e-commerce, half not on e-commerce. And then it kind of quickly took off. As then we realized we should have sold this to a very different market.
Wow. So that was around COVID. So April, springish, summer of 2020 was when you pivoted and it started to shift. Yeah.
The first dollar we ever had of e-commerce was May 3rd or May 2nd, 2020.
Got it.
So until then, I think it was still kind of a question mark of this COVID thing is looking pretty bad.
Yeah. So then at that point, did you guys double down? So I guess at that point, how many employees did you have, and what were your average sales, or what were you trending?
I think 7 or 8 employees in May. We probably in May did $50,000 that month in revenue.
Okay.
And then it quickly grew. We started hiring salespeople. We became cash flow positive.
Nice.
And then we probably got the business to a couple $1 million annual recurring.
Great.
And then I actually went back I interned at Peterson Partners during,
really?
I don't know if you remember, before Walmart, I interned at Peterson. And
I remember that.
So I went back to them, and then they put me in touch with their venture arm, and I've always still do think very highly of them.
Sure.
Kind of went to them and say, hey, I think I might have a business here. And then got a deal done with them, and then that was the first, I think August of 2020, we raised $4.85 million. It's almost $5 million.
Nice.
And the business grew so quick that it went from basically $2,000 a month in revenue in January 2020 to it was doing $300-400K a month by August rolled around.
That's great, dude.
Yeah.
So you raised some money from Peterson, and was the idea there hey, this is going to be enough to grow our staff, our sales team, get a building, lease some space? What did you do with that capital?
Yeah, I think it was just hiring executives. I think I realized hey, we were really good at this stuff, but we're probably not that good at the rest of it. So that was more so to give I think at that point I was still making $0. I say it was $1, so I could be on payroll for insurance benefits and stuff. Yeah. But wasn't making that much money. There was nobody at VIA making more than $55,000 a year full all in, even with commission, I think at that point.
Yeah.
So it was to give raises, but to bring in the first kind of cohort of executives. And we realized we needed true engineers or people in marketing or whatever it might be. So that money, I think for us was, can we actually do this all in a scalable way? And to get to a Series A, right? To say, hey, we have product market fit, but can we make everything better and make it more predictable?
That makes sense. That's great, dude. Well, so you turn a corner, it's looking good. You raised some money. Where did you go from there, and where are you guys at today?
Yeah, it was, I think 2021 was the banner year, but I think April 2021, pretty quick, we raised another $15 million for the Series A.
Okay.
And then I think probably July 2021, so last year, I think we raised another 55.
Wow.
So it all came within 11 months. Nice. And the business grew really, really nicely. But I think most venture-backed companies are realizing now, I think we made the cardinal sin of over hiring a lot because I think when you don't know better and everybody does the same thing and there's all this pressure, it becomes grow at all cost. And that's what's most valued, right? You think about all of the sagas that have happened, but it was the number one premium that the way you would get money or the way you would grow is you just have to grow. And the cost structure was not as important. And now I think in 2022, the narrative has shifted, as interest rates go up, everything, your hurdle rates, everything course corrects, right? Yeah. So I think as interest rates continue and probably more hikes spending, right? I think it really shifted what the hurdle rates are for all these businesses. So I think I call it 2021 a banner year. I think we finished with between $8 and $9 million in revenue.
Wow.
I call that 11 months, raised $75 million.
Nice.
The good thing is we've always retained all that money, so we never actually spent a lot of it. So
that's good.
So I think this year is the year where we we had a lot more, like a lot harder decisions where it wasn't growing 300%, but hey, we want to actually grow 50%, and we're actually perfectly content with doing that. But the hard part becomes is you've now absorbed and hired a cost structure to 3x, but then you've realized now, like, hey, every inkling around you says the markets might not open up for another 2 years, right? Like, it'll be a pretty hard fundraising market. Yeah. So now it becomes grow slower, become more profitable on a unit economic basis, and just it's like slow and steady wins the race now versus before it was like grow at all cost.
How are these VCs looking at tech companies? So on a valuation standpoint, what are those conversations like when they come in and they're like, hey, you know, we want to give you guys $15 million or $55 million. So I guess, first of all, are you doing like a road show? Like, are you going out and pitching every VC firm in you know, in Silicon Valley? And then how are they valuing you, and what are those terms like?
Dude, I think last year was very, very different. This year I haven't fundraised yet, and don't think I will now. I think, you know, I think our hope is maybe 2024 sometime we'll go out to market again. But I remember the seed round in 2020 took us like 3 months to raise. Okay. Never did it. The Series A took us, and that was only like 1 or 2 term sheets, right? For the Series A, it took us 3 weeks, but we got 7 or 8 term sheets, just 8 offers to lead the round at different valuations. And the Series B took us 3 days.
Wow.
And it was like, and I think the multiple on the revenue got exponentially higher. I think we started off, maybe we were trading at like 10 times run rate, to then we, you know, went to like, you know, 20 times run rate. And I think our B was done at like 70 something times revenue.
Wow. That's insane.
So it was a great market in that sense. And I think the diligence, the fundraising rounds get shorter, but I think the diligence gets more intense. So we had like a quality of earnings, like a mini audit from Ernst & Young at the Series B, right? So you do get more financial diligence, but the pace at which people move, I think, gets faster if you have the metrics. This year, I've heard the opposite from a lot of people that have gone to market. But I think last year was, like, for a lot of people, was a banner year. So anyone who's kept their cash, I think is pretty smart and will not go out to fundraise this year, or I think for sure not next year. I think they'll go out to market in 2024. I think the companies that desperately need cash will start doing fire sales, or if they, you know, the FTX saga, right? So if you spent your cash and not been smart about it, it'll, like, this is the market that will shake them all out.
Yeah. So when you're raising capital, I mean, I guess the why it's so you know, dominant, prevalent in tech is because you are not cash flow positive. It takes a long time, I guess, to get cash flow positive, right? Hence, you need cash raise and surplus to be able to do anything. At what point are you guys looking to become kind of cash flow positive, or are you already there? And why even go raise more money if you can get there?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think last year, so I think we stopped turning cash flow positive February last year. I think, like, we had 7 employees and nobody made more than, you know, 55K, and you're doing 300-400K a month with software, like 70-80% margin. So like that was great. That was like, we chose our own destiny, you know? But quickly, when you build that big of a team, it's like, I think it's also when you grow a company, people lose value for the sense of the dollar. Like, you think money solves everything, right? Like how you spend, like when I was sitting there and saying, don't go to Costco, like, and be like, the world is ending, and I was like, this is my last business expense. You lose that when you think money is free, right? And people just like I joke, but we pay $1,000 a month for someone to come water like 10 plants in our Lehigh office. Or $1,200 a month. And I'm like, wow, I never thought I would be that guy who'd pay $1,200 a month for someone to come once a week. That person's making a killing. I think they probably do it for like a lot of tech companies.
You should look into that. Yeah, that's a business model.
But so now I think we started to retrench the company. So we've started to take some actions now to say, hey, I think we're probably overstaffed, like most tech companies are. But I think the goal now is 2025, January, February. I think now we're looking to be cash flow positive. We're actually just like profitable, like operating income wise. So that's where I think now we're aiming towards. A year and 2-3 months now is our like choose your own destiny plan.
Got it. Like, shut off the capital raising. We're on our own. We're doing our own thing, self-funding.
Exactly. And I think if it comes to it and we can take that risk, we would love to go raise. And like, I think tech is also like, you want to go get market share. So we would love to go back out and raise more money. But in the event that the markets don't come back, we've at least chosen our own destiny. Yeah.
So without however much detail you want to go into, but when you raise money, how much control are you giving up? how much ownership, like, are you having to give the farm away to these groups? Have you been able to retain a good amount of equity? Like, how does that all shake out?
Yeah, I think because I started as like a dominant co-founder, like by myself, I had a pretty good split from the beginning. So retain more than what you would get if you split, 50-50 or a third for most partnerships.
Yeah.
With the seed round and the Series A, most seed funds and Series A funds, they kind of like, if they have $100 million fund, they'll deploy 50 in 2 to 3 years. And then the fund cycle is 10. So the next 7 years, they wait for their winners and they throw the farm on their winners, right? They save that 50 to triple down on their winners. So I think for us, and I think the earlier stages, it's all an ownership game. I think, like, I'm not saying that that's a thesis I agree with or not agree with, but I think most of those Series A and seed funds know it, like, you need ownership to do pro rata. So they always target 10 to 20% ownership. Yeah. So I think our seed fund targeted 10% ownership. Our A fund was close to 15% ownership. So you kind of realize that's what you give up. I think in the later growth rounds, that's what you see those rounds where, like, Stripe will raise like 100 million at 95 billion or 400 million. It's less ownership driven because there's not as much pro rata, right? You're probably at the high end of that mark of like being a private company.
Yeah.
So you give a lot more up in the early rounds. Like between your leads, you'll probably give up 20 to 30% for just your seed and your Series A lead. I think after that, it just depends how you fundraise. But you can give up like our Tiger round, we gave up a lot less than we gave up. Like our lead for our Series B got less ownership than our seed fund or our Series A fund, because I think it's a less ownership focus at that point.
Yeah.
But it's the name of the game is owning as much of the company as possible early on, and then making sure you just deploy, right? So I think the earlier rounds we gave up more than I think I'd like to.
Yeah, makes sense. And do these groups have board seats that have control rights? Like when you guys decide to hire, 50 execs, like are they in on that decision? Or how does that work?
Surprisingly, not on that type of decision.
Yeah.
There's nuances there with like corporate governance. So like I can't increase my own salary or give myself more equity.
Okay.
And I can't give equity to anyone else at Via unless it gets approved by the board, right?
Okay.
So I can give it in an offer letter, but it never gets approved until the board votes on it.
Got it.
Our seed and a Series A lead got board seats, and I think they're two of the best investors I've ever worked with. Like I don't think we'd be as far along without them. So I've just had a really good experience there.
That's great.
Our Series B lead doesn't take board seats typically. So we've kind of just had our seed and Series A investors take board seats.
Yeah.
But I think there's a little bit of corporate governance, like selling the company, buying another company, doing a financing round. You need approval from the board. But in terms of like hiring, firing, it's good to keep them updated, but no need for like explicit permission.
Got it. Okay. So I mean, it doesn't sound too ominous. It sounds fair and balanced for what you've
Yes.
given and received in return. So
exactly. Yeah.
That's good. So where are you guys today? So how many employees and kind of where are you tracking, if you can share kind of on sales, and what are your targets?
Yeah, I think our goal has been to double from like the 8 to 10. So call it 16 to 20 this year is the hope.
Nice.
I think e-commerce has been hit a little harder. So
sure.
Like that's like, getting to 16 is our hope.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the hope this year. Employees wise, I think it's like close to 140.
Cool.
We have incredible teams in India and Egypt that have just been crushing. So have been able to keep the cost structure a little bit lower with, I think, better performance. But I think 140 today, and I think we'll probably stay at this number even next year.
Okay.
I think we're just trying to get more efficient with the people that we have versus adding more bodies.
Yeah. Okay. And then what are the next? Yeah. I mean, what I guess what's the long-term goal, Tejas? So, you guys have raised, sounds like 70 plus million, 140 employees, looking to do 15, 16 million in sales over the next year. Like what's the next 5-10 years look like for Via? I mean, what's your end game?
Yeah. I think it's funny. We always think of it from a revenue perspective, but I think the hope has been for us is, can we get to 100 million ARR like 3 years from today? Which is like kind of the pinnacle of SaaS. Like in a lot of ways, early stage SaaS can do 100 million in revenue.
Yeah.
I would love to get to 100 million ARR by the end of 2025. And that's been kind of like heads down, let's get there. So we have the pipeline for next year, year after to get to 50, right? And then do more, right? So I think that's been the hope in 3 years, get to 100 million in revenue, which is like you see people announce that.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I would love to build a vision of the next Shopify. And after the 100 million ARR, the honest answer is I would love to keep working on the vision, whether that's staying private, I would love to, or it's getting acquired. That'd be awesome as well. Mm-hmm. But a big tenet for me has been knowledge and wealth creation. So my parents have been products where they got to live their American dream because whether it was secondaries at later stage companies or the company sold, my mom was doing a company that was, I think it was 20 people and it sold for 200 million 6 months later. And she got a nice couple million from it.
Yeah. Wow.
So for me, I would love to provide that for our employees. So, and I think going private is not as appealing, to be honest, given that I did a lot of IPOs at Credit Suisse and they all trended down. Mm-hmm. Most IPOs don't do too well. So, I'm not a big fan of IPOs. I'd rather just stay private or sell, but I would love to give liquidity in a couple of years. In 3-4 years time, like I would either love to keep working on Via and give liquidity to a lot of people, or I would love to just sell it and keep working on the vision, like how LinkedIn does with Microsoft or MailChimp does with Intuit, but you can still run your company and be part of a bigger organization.
Got it. In terms of, your organization and culture, how important has culture been? How have you created it, and what is your culture like at Via?
I would say that's probably the most important thing. I think I got that wrong a lot of last year through a lot of mistakes. I have this saying now where like when you do a business, you accumulate a lot of debt. You have like technical debt. Your code base could be bad and you're building on top of it. You could have process debt. You never really had good process or materials to build off of. So you had more team members, it's just more inefficient. But I've always said the worst debt is culture debt. I think bad culture is really hard to get rid of because it's like bad culture is like, it's like cockroaches. You find one, you find 100, you find 1,000 and it's just everywhere. And it's like, you have to cut it all out. And even then there's like a hole, right? Yeah. But culture has been everything for us. I think we have like three sayings and we're pretty blatant with recruiting now. Because I think there's a couple of thoughts I have. One is, I think if you have a culture like everybody else, you're just like everybody else. You're an average company. So we've tried to do a job where we take what we call barrels, right? And we have this analogy where we say, and we've borrowed this, right? But we have ammunition, and there's certain people who are just great at ammunition, and there's certain people who are barrels, right? You give them ammunition, they'll go get stuff done. So we've taken our barrels, the best people that we have that can get stuff done, and we said, what are the things that you guys have in common? And our hope is 90% of those qualities are outlier qualities, and not everybody will resonate with them. But if we hire for those qualities at those, if I call myself a barrel with those people, like you should always hire for the quirky personalities and the esoteric qualities of the founder, because that's what will make the company the company. It won't be because it's like honesty, integrity, and hard work, right? That's a given. Sure. So for us, the values we like a lot we have one which is winning and insanely great. We always say this is a team sport, so you win together. And when you want to win so bad, it doesn't matter if you play offense or defense or you're midfield, like you just do it. You stay after practice and you make everybody better. And you scream in practice, you have each other's back, right, in a game. And that's big for us. And I think the insanely great standard is huge. Steve Jobs had a quote where it's either insanely great or it's total shit. Mm-hmm. And I always tell our team, it's either a hell yes or it's a no. So you could be like, hey, do you like that person? Do you want to hire them? Yeah, I think they're good for now. I'm like, okay, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Yeah. So that winning insanely great, we use a ton. We have another one, which is, I just said it, but it's demanding and supportive. We always say so winning and insanely great is a standard you hold yourself and everybody else to. Demanding and supportive is how you are to your team and how you manage up, manage down, manage laterally. But the best coaches, like I think Greg Popovich, right, with the Spurs, would roast Tim Duncan in practice all the time, would go off and break every little part of his game and yell at him in practice. But at the end of the season, he would do this thing where he would say to Tim Duncan, he would say, thanks for letting me coach you. And that's the same philosophy we have here is like, we want to be demanding and supportive of each other, right? That's the only way you actually find satisfaction. And I think the last thing for us, we would say is probably like, it's like work ethic and intellect. It's like the two things you should have for yourself, but work really, really hard. And by intellect, we mean like, know you'll make mistakes, share your failures and get better, right? And consciously know you're going to fail and you create things to get better at. Yeah. But so I'd say winning insanely great, demanding and supportive, and then work ethic and intellect.
I love that, man.
Are the three things we say.
That's some great values that are that are unique and not just the, the work hard and have integrity and have fun.
Be all in or whatever.
Ownership mentality.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, speaking of ownership mentality, like how do you incentivize people? Because I don't know about you, but working at bigger companies, at least maybe it's just me and being entrepreneurial. It's like you come in.
Yeah.
It's like if there's not a path to like having some ownership or some meaningful, role in the company, it's tough to like be super jazzed about what's going on, right?
Yeah,
and not just feel like you're punching the clock every day, right?
100%.
So how are you doing that at VIA? How is that working for you guys?
We try to give equity. So everybody at VIA has equity, which is the first thing. But second, I would say is like, I feel like you can't teach gas pedal. Like you just can't teach it. Like, when someone has it, when someone doesn't. And those values, the reason we hire against them, but we also fire against the same exact values and we promote against them as well. But like, you just can't teach winning insanely great. Like, it's just like, I don't know. I'm a huge proponent of this now, where winning insanely great, demanding and supportive, how you are to others, and then work ethic and intellect, like what you pride yourself on. Like, I am a firm believer. Like, I don't think I can, like, you can't teach that. You have to find people who believe in that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've turned a leaf where I thought maybe you could coach people and give ownership, but I'm of the belief now, like, I just don't think you can, like, if they don't have it from the get-go, it's like, dude, they're never, like, I don't think they'll ever have it.
I agree. Yeah. It's in certain people, and finding like, even if someone isn't entrepreneurial naturally or wants to like break free, like there are amazing, talented people who are perfectly capable and I don't want to use content, but satisfied coming in and working at a company and just building something within a company, like an entrepreneur, somebody who can get excited about it. And to your point, those are the people who are going to make the difference in your company as you grow. So, well, dude, you mentioned, entrepreneurship, wealth, money. So how do you view, now that you guys have had success, how do you view money in your life? Wealth creation, like hopefully you guys can have insane success, have a massive exit. Like what's your mindset with money?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I remember when I left banking, I had a more like, you just, spend all your money because, everybody buys Ferragamo ties.
Yeah.
My now girlfriend of like 3 years, and hopefully I'll propose here next year, but
nice.
I've just been sitting on it because I just a lot of stress. I stress ate a lot, so I got to lose some weight. So I was like, I don't want those pictures being immortalized for my kids or whoever. So now I'm like, I did a Spartan race, which is very hard. So I'm kickstarting a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
But when I started dating Zara, I remember like I made pretty good money like first year as a banker, right? I remember Zara would make good money too, right? She was out of college, and Zara would make like, let's call it like,
this is your girlfriend?
Okay, yeah, Zara, like $3K per paycheck. So $6K after tax or $7K after tax a month, right? Okay. 1 year out of college, 2 years out of college. And I would be like, wow, that is so much money. Cause I was so broke. And I was like, dude, I like can't even buy one thing. I was like, dude, I don't even know, like, wow, $3K. I was like, holy shit. I don't even think I make that much in revenue per month at VIA, right? I would have this realization of like, wow, dude, we don't even have revenue like that. Like I couldn't even pay Zara to come work here because they only have $500K to work out of, I don't know how long this 550K has to last.
Yeah.
But dude, I think as VIA has gotten, I've like had the chance to, get like more comfortable, right, in a lot of ways. And I think it's been interesting where I think the hunger hasn't subsided. Like I remember one of the things was, founders get the chance to sell a little bit of their shares, right? For me to buy a ring for Zara, or I bought a place in Utah, right? Like a townhome, nothing crazy. Mm-hmm. But I got to take a chance to take a little bit of money off the table. And I remember thinking like, this is awesome, but it wasn't even close to enough to like be like, I never have to work again. Yeah. Like I'm just like, my fortune is very much tied to this enterprise,
Yeah.
But it's gotten better where I think like I feel like I'm not broke, but I definitely feel like I need VIA for sure to work, and I want to be successful and everybody here to be successful. But I think it's interesting where when I joined VIA, I remember I told Zara this, and she remembers it, where I said, I want $10 million like net worth. That's my goal. Yeah. And if I take my VIA stock, it's for sure over 10 million. But now I've like increased the bar where I'm like, dude, I want $100 million clean if I were to leave this thing. Yeah. And my fear is I'm going to make that like 400 million or 500 million or whatever it might be. But I always feel like the bar is getting higher.
Yeah.
I think the number for me is 100 million now, like clean, hopefully.
Yeah.
But that's the relation to money now, I think, is like, don't have that much, right? Like, unfortunately, like bought a ring and bought a bunch of stock at the height of the market in November. So like, Shopify, where we work a lot with as a partner, is not doing too well. So a lot of my money's tied up there. But I don't know. It's like, it's an interesting relationship where now I feel like I don't have to think twice if I buy something.
Yeah.
But it's still just like that hunger to make that first big exit is still very much there.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
And to your point about resetting the bar, I think that's a common theme with entrepreneurs or business owners. It's like, you hear the stories about guys who write themselves a check 5 years from now, and it's like for $1 million, and then they get there and they're like, man, I was thinking so small.
Yes, a ton.
I wish that check would have been 10 million or 100 million or what have you.
Yeah.
Because I think you can surprise yourself with how much you can accomplish, within a 5-year period or what have you, right?
Dude, agreed. A ton.
So I love it, man. In terms of habits or, best practices, I don't know if you have anything, Tejas, whether it's, setting goals or planning or reading or like things that you've done throughout your life that you feel like have benefited you in terms of your success.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I feel like everything I've done has just become like a morphed into VIA. So I do a lot of sauna and cold plunges. I've always done it. Okay. Like even when I'm out of shape now, but I've always done that a lot. I've always felt like it grounded me a lot and that type of stuff. I do now, and I've started to do a lot, just do fasting. I think it makes me a lot sharper. I started getting into a little bit of like biohacking and stuff. Okay. Nice. So I used to drink more frequently alcohol, not anymore as much, but I think the one thing I've always done well though is like I've tried to like, I have this kind of routine where I call it a 5-minute routine that I've written down. And as embarrassing as it is, it's like a combination of like pictures that get me inspirational. So I have like Tom Brady and Lewis Hamilton on there. Nice. As like consistent high performance and dedication to the game, right? The game just sucks and they were not obvious choices. So I have like pictures, quotes, and even like a couple like short videos. So I joke where like I work from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. I start working at 10 p.m. to like 2 a.m. But for that stint, I read through that 5-minute thing and I click on the links. But I have a quick rituals to get me back into the zone. And it's like things where like I've written to myself, like none of us have to do this. We get to do this. Like we get to wake up in America and to be able to walk freely and still have like the ability to think well and not be in an accident. Right. But I've like created like 5 minutes worth of content just for myself. Cause dude, this is really hard. Like even getting a second wind at night is like, wow, this is like, I got to drink some caffeine and do it. But I've created like small little things that remind me of like, okay, this is why I'm doing it, or just motivation. Yeah.
So that's great. So are you still doing that 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. grind?
Not this week. I did a 21K Spartan race. I told myself I wanted to get back in shape, but it was the worst. I finished, but it was the worst mistake, I think. I'm very, very sore, but I'm not this week because of Thanksgiving, and I think it was just the Carolinas. I was in really cold water for most of it. But
apart from this week, I mean, is that still your
Still it is, yeah.
Really?
I do Monday through Thursday. So I do like 9 a.m. to 6 to 7 p.m. and I do 10 p.m. to like 2 a.m. Really? And I work still like 5, 6, 7, 8 hours on Sunday. Wow. But it's super diligent. And I think it's like, I think part of it too is like, you have to be in the details. Like you look at the best, like Tom Brady and Lewis Hamilton, for example, right? Like everybody's always in the details. So I think for me, I realize like I'm not at that stage yet. For VIA to get to where it needs to go, I still have to be super involved. And we have a great team, but there's some areas I think I still have to be, like I haven't earned the right yet to be hands off.
Yeah, that makes sense, dude. I mean, and are you going to the office for that? Or are you working from home, or what's your guys' setup?
Dude, mostly in the office. So we have Monday, Wednesday, Thursday in office. So I'm for sure in the office those days. Yeah. I'm usually Monday through Thursday in office, and then Friday just to work from home and relax a little bit. Yeah. But dude, it's still a sheer grind. Like it's still like the amount of discipline it takes to like I joked, I never worked banking hours until like February this year. And I was like, I probably was pulling 80, 90 hours a week for like 3-4 months there straight. Yeah. But it was a sheer, like just output and grind.
Well, that's what it takes, man. Yeah. To get something off the ground. I love how you told the story of having, you're at your last meal thinking this is the last time you're going to be able to spend something. Cause I mean, Park West, we're a newer company too. And we're going through, there's so much stress about this has to work. Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like you have X amount of dollars and X amount of time. Like you've got to make it work. I mean, maybe dive through kind of like the hard work mindset. Like what pushed you guys through? Maybe it's not that specific time, but what has pushed you through hard times, you know, when things have been down?
Dude, yeah, there's been a lot of downtime. So I joke every 5 days I have 3 are probably pretty shitty. Like even if they're going well, I'm just like convincing myself like when I did the Spartan race, half the time was me telling I'm going to quit at the next like obstacle. Yeah. And like, dude, I can't do this. And the other half of the time was like, no, I could do it. Yeah. Like I think during the hard times, I don't know. It's like I think operating is addicting. Whenever I have not done via, like I take like a week break. I usually take 3 weeks off every November. Like I don't take any time off other than that. Yeah. But even so, the 3 weeks I just took off, I'm like, what else would I want to do? Like the thrill of the game, like the craft, like it sucks so bad. Like to stay there and to get better and to break your own learning and to get like, dude, it's brutal, like every which way. But there's something that I found so addicting about it. Like it's just like I don't know, I love it. It's like pain almost. Yeah. I don't know if I'm a masochist, but like I'm like this is like I love it, you know. Yeah. But there's an element of it where I just like the game, and it's just like fuck, this is so hard. But I really like part of the reason why I did the Spartan race 21K was like I haven't run in probably 3 years, dude. And I was just like fuck it, why not? Yeah. As painful as it was, but I don't know. Part of it too, man, is I think I just don't know if I could like live with myself. And if I look at like greats from any walk of life, I think the one thing in common is I don't think anyone wakes up every day and says, dude, I want to do this. Like, I think everybody goes like, Michael Phelps says it best, where he says, if you ask the greats from any walk of life, there's not a single person that says, oh, this is what I want to do today. I don't think Michael Phelps included, like Jordan, Kobe, Lewis Hamilton, Tom Brady. I think everybody, it's just like high output is consistency. And it's just saying like, hey, I'm going to get there. I think it helps once you had your first couple wins. So the Series B fundraise, the Forbes 30 under 30, like once I got a taste for it, I was like, wow, imagine what else could be out there. Like and how much bigger we could get. And like when you win a lot and you get revenue, your first $1 million deal, the little things help because it shows you like, I think it's hard to get to the first couple little things. But I think it's knowing that like, dude, it's like, I think Mark Cuban has a quote where he says like, startups don't die, founders quit. And it's the same thing, dude. You work hard enough, you get lucky enough. And there's so many businesses that are like that. I think James Dyson spent like 7 or 8 years trying to perfect the vacuum cleaner. And he talked about coming home every single night and just being like, dude, I'm so screwed, and just being so upset and being like, I don't know how to look at my wife. But I think there's the best quote I can think about, man. I think about all of these experiences, right? So I read a lot of biographies, like Shoe Knight, Made in America, like Tom Waite made us read, right? Yeah. I read a book from the founder of Four Seasons, or about him, his biography, and he says a quote in there because he came from like no name anything, right, and created the Four Seasons, which sold to Bill Gates, right, for like $4 or $5 billion, and he says excellence is the capacity to take pain. And he says that's the most common thing you can think about. So for me, during the hard times, I think about that this is normal. Like it sucks. Like don't get me wrong. Like it sucks really bad. But the thing that always gets me energized is like anyone that we've ever looked up to had to do that too. Like it wasn't obvious to any of them, dude. Like, I don't know. I think about a lot about athletes, right? Like, dude, it's just sheer grind, studying plays, sitting there and be like, dude, fuck, I just got to keep throwing the same ball again and again. Yeah. But I always think about like anyone that's ever done anything that's worthwhile, it's just sheer grit, perseverance, right? You think about The Rock, Kevin Hart, like even them have been in the game for a long time. The Rock made movies in 2002 and 3, was not popular at all, right? Yeah. But I've realized now, like it's going through these moments that makes really, really strong people. And part of it is taking a lot of pain means you're going to become the best founder, the best investor, the best actor, the best athlete, whatever it might be. But I think those are the moments where like a lot of people quit. For me, I've always said, hey, this is part of the journey. And once you see the first couple wins, I think it makes it a lot easier. But even now, dude, it's tough for me in this market to think that like, dude, we might never raise at 70 times revenue. So for us to justify the valuation we raised at, fuck, I don't know. It might take 1.5 years, 2 years to even live up to that valuation, right? I'm like, damn, to build $1 billion company just got a lot harder on paper, at least, right? Because the valuations aren't there. But I don't know. I just think life is really hard, and I just have to remind myself that I get to do this. And at the end of the day, it's that knowledge and wealth creation. If you can do that for other people and for yourself and your family, like all else is forgiven, right? That's what I think about in those times. It's never a specific thing. Like I'd be lying if I said it was like my parents or Zara or like my cousins. Like I don't think so. Like I think it's myself. Yeah. That to be who I want to be, I have to do this. It's part of my it's part of my journey. So I think it's the same for like any great story. I think has a chapter of just like non-believers, nothing's working, this sucks. And dude, people have had, I joke, but like Dyson, if you ever read his autobiography, that guy went 8-9 years without anything working as a vacuum. Like his physical product never worked, and this like was debt ridden, had loans on his on his houses and everything. And he was just like, I don't know how I could, and he would cry at night. He wrote about that. Wow. And he would just sit there and at night cry and be like, look at his wife who's like turned the other way and be like, wow, I really need this to work. But I think that's it. Like everybody who's ever been successful has gone through this too.
I love it, man. There's so much good that you just said there. One thing that stuck out to me the most is, you mentioned these all-time greats and waking up and probably not being super excited about what they're doing.
Yeah.
If you're going off of motivation, you're going to give up pretty quickly because you can only have so many moments that are motivating
100%,
in your life. But if you are going off of discipline and habit and perseverance, ultimately you're going to succeed.
Tons.
It's just, you mentioned having those little wins are those motivating factors, but the tank's going to deplete eventually. Like you can't live off those, It does come down to just perseverance, grind, hard work, and really never giving in, man.
100%.
Last question I have for you, Tejas. What advice would you give to somebody who is wanting to start their own business, but just hasn't for one reason or the other? Maybe their fear of failure, or the risk is too much. I guess what advice would you give to somebody in that position?
Yeah, my advice would be, I've always thought about it this way. Like we have one shot at the game of life, like at least on this planet, right? And for me, it's always been, like, why would I play someone else's game? Like you think, and it's really true, right? You think about like the entire world around you, like you're driving, somebody made money off the trees they planted, the land that was sold, the person who owned the land, the person who sold the land, that evaluated the land, and then who built the road, who sold the concrete, who sold the asphalt. So I think of it as almost as like everywhere around you, it's like people have made a lot of money. It's not a question of if, it's like when did they make it, how much did they make, right?
Yeah.
So one is, I think like you have, I don't know, I've always been a firm believer, like, dude, we have one shot at playing the game of life. Like, why would we ever do it under someone else's rules? And not everyone could be an entrepreneur, right? But I've always seen it as like part of the reason I think we fundraise at such high valuations, or even via, and why we fundraise at the pace that we did, was I was never scared to ask people. Like I was never scared to be like, so what? You're going to forget about me in 10 years. That's fine. But I'm going to ask you if we can do a higher deal, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be smart about it and come prepared. But I've always felt like most people are so scared about immediate reaction and popularity contests that they don't think about the 5-10 year plan, like you were saying, right? But I would just advise, like, as long as you have like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs settled, right? Like you have enough food, you have money, the things you need to live are settled. Dude, it's just, you have one life. Like the younger you are, the better it is, right? You either do it in your 20s and early 30s, or you do it in your 50s, right? Because your kids are going to college, you want to be more stable, right? Extracurriculars, things like that. So I call it, you have two big shots to do it. You either do it when you're younger, or you do it when you're at the tail end of your career. Mm-hmm. But dude, I've always been a very, very big proponent of just why play someone else's game? Like everybody else around you got lucky, you can too, right? But I think it takes choosing an area that you want to be passionate about, and you have something. Like for you with real estate, for me seeing a lot of tech, I think it'd be really hard for me to go into real estate and do it, because like intrinsically I haven't seen that in my life or had the passion or whatever, right? But I think it takes your set of interests and what you think you're going to be good at in your zone of genius, and pairing it with the type of business you want to start. But I think if you do that, dude, it's just, every successful person has taken that leap, and there's so many success stories. But I think if you take that leap, it has to be unrelenting work ethic. Like, because if you don't have that, like, you will never succeed. That's my only like parting advice, I think, is don't play someone else's game. But if you're going to do it, it has to be unrelenting.
Amen, dude. That's a perfect way to cap this all off. This has been great.
Dude, appreciate it. Thanks you for
so much,
having me.
Tejas. It's been real, man. We'll have to do it again in a few years when you guys hit a big.
Hopefully a lot bigger. So
yeah. Okay, dude. Thanks a lot for being here.
Okay, of course.
Appreciate it.